Pretty much my whole adult life, I have been obsessed with studying money and achieving success, but probably not for the reasons that you'd expect. Now, if you saw any of the content that I used to make in my earlier 20s, you would probably just assume that I'm really into cars and nice things. And you would be partially right. I do love nice things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what you don't know is the real reason that I have grown up obsessed with money. And I'm gonna share it with you at the end of this video because it's far more important than Lambos and houses. But regardless of your motivation for getting rich, I'll be sharing 10 lessons in this video that I've learned through my obsession that will help you do just that. And how this diagram is gonna dictate the amount of wealth that you actually accumulate in this lifetime. The first lesson has to do with the outside of the diagram, because that's what holds all the logic in the middle together, and it dictates how large it can actually grow. And that is your mindset and your beliefs. And before you click away thinking, yeah, Amy, I know, I've heard this stuff before, doesn't apply to me, I'm good. Give me a second. For all my logical folk, of which I am one too, let me give you a real logical example of why you shouldn't gloss over this part and why I keep these bad boys on my desk. Now, if I turn the magnets this way, there are forces that I cannot see that are pulling the magnets together. But if I turn them the other way and make just a slight shift to the energetic field, there are now forces that I cannot see repelling them from one another. And I can push them together for just a second, but it's incredibly hard to keep them there, and it requires a lot of force. So what does this have to do with getting rich? Stick with me. The thoughts and beliefs that you hold in your mind create the feelings that you feel, which change your energy and dictate the actions that you do or do not take. And Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. There was also a study done by Dr. David Hawkins that revealed the existence of an energetic field that is influenced by our emotions. Now, he actually produced a scale showing that emotions like shame and fear have a much lower frequency than emotions like love and enlightenment. So the way that we feel affects our frequency. And what we just saw is that a shift in frequencies actually magnetizes or repels depending on the frequency. So you can be doing all the logical and tangible steps that I'm about to share with you. We're gonna get into that. But your wealth will only ever grow to the degree that you can expand your energetic capacity to receive and hold it. So if you're doing all the logical work and you're just not seeing results, or maybe you have results but you can't seem to hang on to them, then this is a sign that you might want to check in with your energy, because subconsciously, maybe you have something going on underneath the surface, just like we saw with the magnets, that is actually repelling it. And something that contributed to my early success is I really immersed myself in the world of personal development and removed a ton of my limiting beliefs. And I think this is something that we all really need to do. And we don't just need to do it once, it is a practice. We have to keep on top of it, otherwise they tend to sneak back in. And I'm reminded of this constantly. Just recently in one of our businesses, we were having kind of a month where we hadn't changed any of the variables, but we saw one of the data points really dip, and nothing had changed. Except I recognized that my energy had shifted. And it's kind of interesting when I started to kind of get back into the routine of, all of my practices to raise my energy and start the day right and to really stay on top of my mindset, the data went back up to where it originally was. And you could write that off and say it's a coincidence, but I've had this happen so many times that I don't believe it's one at all. But apart from the results shifting, I was just way happier and I was far more present and enjoying life more. So I really believe that you have to develop regular practices around getting your mind and keeping your mind in the right place, energetically getting to a state where you are able to receive and hold more wealth. And for me, this looks like journaling. Number one, every morning I journal as my future self. So in the present tense, I actually start writing out all of the things that I'm grateful for that in my mind I've already achieved 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years from now. And I actually sit in the emotion of how grateful I am that those things have already come into my life. Second thing I'll do is I start the day meditating. I do a little red light and meditation situation, which just helps me kind of quiet down the chatter in my mind and actually get control of it. Because I believe that if we don't control our minds, they're going to control us and they'll run the day instead of us running the day. So I like to start the day with a little bit of quieting down that chatter in my mind, removing and just being aware of some of the limiting beliefs and some of the negative self-talk that by nature I think just comes up in all of us from time to time, being more cognizant of it and replacing it with things that are more supportive of what I want to achieve that day and ultimately what I want to achieve and experience and feel in life every day. So I start the day by meditating and journaling as my future self, but I also have a bunch of different sticky notes around the house because it's really easy to just get into the work, get into the day, get into whatever we're doing, have a bad conversation with someone, and to go back to that negative place. So I have a bunch of visible sticky notes, one when I brush my teeth, of all of the beliefs and thoughts that I want to reinforce in my mind to bring me back to those if I ever kind of deviate from them. Something else that I do, and I recommend every single human on earth do, I cannot believe that there are people out there that don't do this, it's work out regularly. It is one of the easiest ways to make you feel better, to make you look better, which in turn makes you feel better, and to overall just increase the amount of energy that you have to expend on doing all of the logical and tangible things to actually achieve your goals. So highly recommend a regular practice around whatever you need to do to get your mind in the right place, and then whatever you need to do to get your body in the right place, and just making sure that you do actually have a regular practice that helps you maintain and raise your energy. All right, lesson number 2 is going to help you with lesson number 1, and that is to ruthlessly remove shitty people from your life. Why? Because your energy, your actions, and your belief influences and is influenced by the people around you. I personally make a conscious habit to distance myself from anyone or anywhere that doesn't help me grow. Firstly, environmentally, at 22 years old, I moved from Australia to the other side of the world, and to me, it's no coincidence that the very next year I made my first $1 million. Trying to become successful around small-minded people is like trying to get warm while you're standing in a freezer. No matter how positive your attitude might be, the surroundings are gonna stop you from actually getting warm. On the contrary, if you go and stand in a sauna, you're gonna naturally warm up. Your surroundings are gonna facilitate your warmth. And the same is true with success. Just placing yourself in a more supportive environment can completely change your life. Now, here's some of the criteria I use to help me determine who I should spend more time around versus less time around. And I actually have it written out on my phone. So the first is, does this relationship help me reach my goals or deter me from reaching my goals? The second is, do I feel better or worse about myself after I see this person? The third is, does this person inspire me to grow in some way? And the fourth is, does this person complain or project their own limiting beliefs onto me in any way? Now, if I ask myself these questions and the answers are not good, then I still love them, but I love them from afar. And this is your permission to do the same. Now, this will naturally increase the size of the circle on the outside of the diagram because now your environment is far more supportive of it actually increasing in size. Lesson 3 is one from the great Elon Musk.
I have no problem being hated, by the way.
I hear
Hate
you.
away. It's a real weakness to want to be liked.
Now, as we get to the middle of the circle, to the more tangible actions that we need to take to build and acquire wealth, you'll learn that it requires other people. Money is freely flowing, and to acquire it, you need to connect with people who want to give it to you in some capacity, whether that's a business, customers, shareholders, or a job. Most people do not acquire massive amounts of wealth sitting alone in a dark room. You must be visible. And when you're visible, you open yourself up to being perceived. And if you want to be liked by everyone, then you're never going to acquire great wealth because subconsciously, you'll never put yourself out there to the degree required to actually do so. So what is the antidote then to the fear of perception? For me, it's to have a healthy view of yourself and to understand human psychology. You will never be criticized by someone who is doing more than you. You will only be criticized by someone doing less. And when you are criticized, the key is empathy, because you've triggered that other person to perceive themselves as less than you, because you're out there doing all the things that they've actually given up on. And this is something I have firsthand experience with when I first started putting myself out there on YouTube. I got a lot of love, which I'm very grateful for, and I also got a whole lot of hate, which I wasn't expecting at the time. I was a little bit naive to the fact that that would happen. And because I was young and naive, it affected me. And what I noticed is the better the relationship with myself got, the less it actually affected me. So in a way, anyone's perception of us that is triggering us is just a mirror of all the things that we haven't yet loved and healed within ourselves. So if you can get to the place of actually being grateful for that person mirroring back your own insecurities so that you can work on them, then that is the ultimate key. Plus, I always remind myself that staying small is not a solution to this potential problem because people are judging us right now. Whether you're doing it big or you're staying small and you're sitting in a dark room, people are perceiving you. People are judging every single one of us right now. You maybe just don't know it or you don't focus on it. So if it's happening anyway, why not do it big? If you don't, the circle on the outside of the diagram, which controls how much you can actually accumulate and hold in this lifetime, will always be restricted by the degree to which you feel comfortable being perceived. All right, now onto the more tangible actions inside the circle. You've got to know your FI number or your financial independence number. And this is how much you need invested to be able to live off the income from your investments alone forever. Now, if you don't know this, click the link in the description because I have a free guide that breaks it all down for you, as well as the 7 steps that it actually takes to achieve financial independence. But the first step comes from knowing your annual expenses. And if you download the guide and use the spreadsheet within it, then I encourage you to do it 2 different times. The first time for your current annual expenses. This is what you need to get by. The second time, do it for your dream life. Price out every single thing that you want to experience in this world. Because the reality is, if you've never priced it out, you actually haven't even considered having it. Not only that, but if you haven't priced it out and you don't know your numbers, then you actually have no North Star to help you make buying decisions, which we'll talk about later. Most people, when you say, how much money do you want? Or how much money do you need? They're stuck in answering, oh, I need more, or I need enough. But knowing your number actually now gives you a tangible destination. Then once you have that number clear, then you can use a calculator like this one that I created for the students inside my finance community to actually keep tabs of that number and your progress toward it. Because the reality is what isn't measured isn't going to improve. So if you don't know your number, pause this video right now, click the link in the description, go grab that guide and figure it out. So once we have our North Star, we know our numbers. The next logical question is, how on earth do we get there? And the first part of that equation is our income. We must increase our income. So let's take a look at how. Firstly, you've got to learn high income skills. Now, most of us are going to start working at a job. I started working in a bank while I was studying finance. I told you I've been obsessed with money my whole life, and it is a demonstration of that. I thought that by studying finance, working at the bank, that it would teach me what I needed to know to get ahead. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I had to figure that out myself. But the goal of being in a job early on is to save and invest as much as humanly possible while we're there so that we build up a nest egg and we feel comfortable taking risks later on. Now, the other thing that is really beneficial about having a job is the fact that we can actually learn high income skills from others. So some jobs are going to be better than others for doing this. So if you're just starting out and you're wondering, okay, well, which skills should I learn? What type of job should I take? My answer would be anything that actually produces revenue for the business, like a job in marketing, like a job in sales. Anything that has a direct impact on the business's bottom line is going to be more valuable to the business, so will often garner a much higher of a price, a much higher hourly rate if you are getting paid hourly. Or you can actually negotiate to get paid on commission, get paid to eat what you actually hunt. And this is the model that I would really recommend. Number one, because technically then you're more valuable to the company, you're producing revenue for them directly, and so you're going to be one of the last people to be let go because you're so integral in the business. But the second reason that I really recommend eating what you hunt early on and negotiating a pay structure that actually allows you to be rewarded when you achieve results and to not actually be rewarded when you don't achieve results is because this gets you thinking like an entrepreneur early on. And the crazy thing is, school only ever teaches us how to sell our time for money. And we have to shift out of that if we want to generate and acquire real wealth, because time is a finite resource. So if we want to truly get ahead and increase the income portion on this diagram, then we really have to be thinking about how we can monetize our skills and productize our knowledge instead of monetizing our time alone. So use the job that you have early on to acquire high income skills, to teach yourself valuable parts of running a business, and to build your nest egg so that you feel more comfortable later on taking larger and larger risks. And then while you're at the job, I recommend doing what I did every morning, every night. Be learning how to actually sell something other than your time for money. Be learning all the tangible skills needed to actually productize your expertise and your knowledge so that you can eventually get out of selling your time and switch into a model where you're just selling something other than your time. Now, chances are you probably know that, but you might have gotten stuck at either the how or the what. What do I sell and how do I do it? And so we have to start by going back to Business 101. Businesses exist to solve people's problems. And so if we're talking about how to maximize your own personal wealth, then we want to make sure we're choosing the right business model that's actually aligned with doing so. Now, I actually spoke in this video about the 4 different business models and the only 4 ways that you can actually use to solve people's problems, and the one that I recommend early on because it produces the most cash flow. Now, we want to be focusing, especially in our first business and in the earlier days, we want to be focusing on optimizing for cash flow. So after this video, go check that one out so that you know what business model to actually start with. But your success in business overall is going to come from the combination of these 3 things. Firstly, the offer. What are you actually offering people to solve their problem? Secondly, the niche, who are you solving the problem for? And thirdly, your marketing volume, because that's going to determine how many people actually know that you and your company exist, and they can actually show up and pay you to have their problem solved. So in a nutshell, once you transcend the model of selling your time for money and you move into a business where you're solving a problem for profit, then your income is going to be determined by these 3 things: the size of the problem you solve, who you solve it for, and how many people you solve it for. Now, if you're needing a little inspiration when it comes to your business idea, then go grab the free guide in the description that I put together. It has 200 profitable online business ideas already done for you inside, and hopefully it gets the creative juices flowing. My next lesson is to build a personal brand, because for people to buy from you, they need to know that you exist. I made millions of dollars without spending a dime on advertising early on because I was brave enough or crazy enough to show up online and just start sharing my story. And when we did actually start spending on advertising, what we learned is organic marketing is just far more powerful. It's also how we grew my software company MemberUp 22% month over month in the first year of being live. Guys, I know it's scary, but it has literally never been easier to just grab out your phone and start documenting your journey. Share something online today, tomorrow, the next day that is gonna help someone. You're gonna learn so much more through the act of just doing it and having it suck initially than you will ever trying to strategize and perfect from the sidelines and make sure that you never look bad or you never fail. It won't happen that way. Like I said, one of my first lessons is we have to get over the fear of being perceived. And if we can do that, the rewards on the other side are massive. If I had let my fear of being perceived stop me from initially putting out those videos, I wouldn't have made millions of dollars organically if I hadn't done that. And so there is a massive reward, not only financially, but also mentally, for you just getting to a place where you feel comfortable being perceived, where you feel comfortable with yourself, where you feel comfortable showing up in a way that is actually just trying to connect with others instead of trying to be perceived a certain way by others. So yes, your first stuff's going to be cringe. What I'm creating right now, 3 years from now, it's going to be cringe too. So this is permission to show up, to let yourself be cringe, because anyone who's judging you, chances are they want what's on the other side as well. They're just not brave enough to actually show up and go and get it. All right, my next lesson is that money loves speed. You have to get in the habit of making decisions quickly and not looking back. Even if it is the wrong decision, you are going to learn more from having made the wrong decision than you will from sitting on the sidelines and pondering that same decision for 5 or 10 years. You have to get in the habit of viewing time as your most valuable resource. It is ticking down every single second. And so the longer we sit around and wait to make decisions, that is all just time passing us by. So gather the necessary information that you need to make a decision as quickly as possible, then decide. Then go. Do not sit around questioning it, especially if you don't know what information you're needing to make the decision. Most of the time, if you're sitting around and you're avoiding making a decision, that's actually fear. It is not a logical thing where you're waiting to have the details necessary to actually decide. Most of the time we have that or could easily get that. Most of the time, it's actually going to be us afraid of making the wrong decision, so we just avoid making one altogether. But the worst place that you can ever be in is looking back on your life saying, I wish I would have decided. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have taken action. I wish I would have said yes to that opportunity. What is the worst thing that can happen? Say yes. You're going to learn so much more from actually deciding, making the decision, even if it's the wrong one, than you ever will from delaying making the decision until the end of time. All right, so by now, if you've taken all the steps so far, you've got a dope mindset that's supportive of your goals. You've productized your knowledge. You're no longer selling your time for money and you're making bank. You know your number. You've got a clear North Star of where you're headed. but none of it actually matters unless you do this too. We got a few more very, very crucial steps left. The first is that you have to learn to manage your money wisely. Because even if you're making bank, and I've seen this time and time again, even if you're making bank, but you spend it just as quickly as you make it, you will never get ahead. You will always be a slave to making more and more and more. Now, I told you that I love nice things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we have to be very cognizant of when and why we're buying things. Because otherwise, like I said, we're gonna end up in this trap where we're spending just as much as we're making, and our lifestyle just increases to the degree of our income. And once you actually learn more about money and see every dollar as one that could be out there fighting for your freedom for you, because to me, money is just my ability to buy back my time. So the more money I have and the more I treat it wisely and put it into places where it's multiplying, then that dollar is actually multiplying my freedom. It's out there fighting for my freedom for me. But if I spend it on something, which there's nothing wrong with doing, I need to be making sure that I'm consciously making that decision that number one, I still have money invested, that I'm still doing all of the smart things to multiply and build my wealth on this side, and I can actually buy that thing as well. So sometimes we get into the habit of just buying things because we want a quick thrill, we want to feel better, or we do it kind of unconsciously. So I actually have a set of questions on my phone that I ask myself before buying anything. And after a while, this becomes autonomous. You don't actually need to get out your phone in the store. But what it does do is it creates a different way of viewing money, and it creates kind of a check and balance before you unconsciously just go and spend money on things. Because like I said, once you learn what money could be doing for you instead, you're not going to want to spend your money on frivolous things. So here are the questions that I ask myself. Number one, how happy will this make me? Because I am definitely not an advocate of just living in the worst conditions and foregoing all of life's pleasures to financially get ahead. I don't think that that puts you energetically in the right state. And I also just don't think that that's a great way to go through life. I think it's a scarcity mindset. And so asking yourself, how happy will this make me, is actually a really good frame to think through, because sometimes the answer is really freaking happy. And if that's the case, then allow yourself to splurge every now and then. That is totally fine. But what you also might find is that the thing won't make you very happy at all. And if that's the case, then that would be an indication of, maybe I don't really need that extra poncho or that umbrella. Like, I'm probably not going to use it at all. It's not really going to make me happy. Probably not worth spending money on. The second question is, how much do I need to make to afford this? Most people don't understand the answer to this question, have no idea how to even answer this question. They normally think in terms of the monthly payment. So if I were to be buying a car, they think, oh, can I afford $500 a month? I can. Okay, great. They don't think in terms of the principal plus the interest. They're not thinking in terms of the interest rate. They're not thinking in terms of anything other than just, can I make ends meet this month? So it's wise to really have awareness around how much you need to make to afford something. Now, it's going to be different for a house and a car and all of these different things. But in general, if you can't buy it 3 times, don't buy it at all. Now, the next question is, how many hours of my life am I actually trading for it? Because time is money. Even if we're in a business, you should know your true hourly rate. So even if you have a business and you're not directly selling your time for money, you should be able to divide your annual income by the amount of hours that you're working every single week and get an indication of how much an hour of your time is actually worth. That's going to help you actually answer this question. And whenever you start to see money as time, then you might question spending the $100 on that thing when you realize that, oh damn, that's actually 5 hours of my time. I don't really care about it that much. So starting to think this way is just going to help shift you into a more productive frame of mind when you are actually viewing money as time, because it is. The next is, how do prices compare in terms of percentages? Wealthy people don't think in terms of dollars, they think in terms of percentages. So while you might say, oh, that's only $20 more, is that 20% more? Because if that's the case, that's actually huge. So start thinking in terms of percentage difference instead of dollar amount difference at any level, whether it's $20, $20,000, $200,000, $2 million. Start thinking in terms of percentages. Next question is, what is the cost per use of this item? Now, this is something I love doing with clothes. So I recently actually reduced my wardrobe into more of a capsule style wardrobe with higher quality items that I would wear more frequently. So previously I had a ton of clothes, and it was a situation where I'd buy it, I'd wear it once, I'd never see it again, and that would just take up space. And I wanted to be a little more intentional about what I actually bought. So I allowed myself to spend more on the clothes I was buying, but the cost per wear of each item was actually much, much better. The next question is, how much money will this be worth in future? Obviously gets you to start thinking in terms of depreciation. Is it going to hold its value? Is it going to lose its value? Particularly relevant in relation to houses, cars, things like that. We don't want to be buying depreciating assets. So you always want to have awareness around how much that's going to be worth in future. Now, the last one I'll share with you, I have a few more on my list, but the last one that I will share is, how much time freedom is this buying me? You can see the common theme here. Time is money, money is time. And so we always want to be tying the two together. And it becomes a lot easier not to spend money on that sweatsuit that you'll wear one time that you never need, that's overpriced, when you realize that that could actually be invested in an index fund and be buying you an extra year of your life. When you start thinking like that, everything starts to shift. So hopefully you wrote down some of those questions and they can help you make better buying decisions so that you don't end up in that cycle of buying a bunch of stuff you don't need to impress people that you don't like, because then we're just slaves to consumerism. All right, this next lesson is what's going to allow everything that we've talked about so far to compound and expand massively, and that is investing. Now, this is not something that I talked about at the very start of the list, although it is something that every single person on earth needs to be doing early and often. Now, so many people make the mistake of thinking investing is a rich person's game and you should only do it once you have a certain amount. I actually take a very, very different approach, because the reality is most people are going to watch videos like this. They're never going to start the business. And so they're going to be living off of employment income their entire lives. So if that is you, it's so important that you save and invest, because that's going to be how you actually retire. Whether it's at 50 or 65, whatever target year you have to retire, you have to invest to get there. You cannot save your way to retirement. The earlier you start investing, the more important, because it's not as much the amount that you put in the market, but the amount of time it actually has to compound that matters the most. So even if you can only start investing $10 a month, $5 a week, whatever it might be, get in the habit early of investing, because time is the most important thing. Now, if you don't know where to start and you want someone to explain it to you incredibly simply, click the link in my description. I have a free 90-minute investing workshop where I'll show you really, really simply how to get started so that you don't leave it so late in life and then have to really try and catch up later on, because the longer you wait, the harder it actually becomes. Now, if you are someone that has a business, then you want to be making sure that you are setting aside and investing as much as possible so that you can get ahead and get to that FI, or that financial independence number, as soon as humanly possible. Because once we can live off of the income from our investments and spend that, that's when we're in a place of complete freedom, where we can maintain our lifestyle without doing a thing. That is what we actually want to aim for. Now, you might be like me and always want to do something, and that's totally fine. It doesn't matter how much I have, I'm going to feel completely restless if I'm not building and working on something that I enjoy. That's just who I am. But the key here is that you want to have the choice. You don't want to be someone that's working when they're 80 years old because they have to, and they have to make ends meet. It's one of the saddest things ever. So whatever your lifestyle is that you desire, you want to make sure that you're saving and investing enough to be able to maintain that lifestyle and have work be optional versus something that we resent and that we have to do just to get by. It is so incredibly simple to start investing, and it's something that we should have all been taught in school. We weren't, which is why now I'm such a massive advocate for sharing this stuff. So if you don't know how, please go and watch that masterclass. Like I said, it's completely free, and you will understand how to actually get started with what you have, even if it's just, $10 a week, something like that. Anything is better than nothing. And my last lesson, and then I'm going to share with you the real reason that money actually matters so much to me. But the last lesson is that none of this is going to happen on its own. You can watch this YouTube video and a bunch of other ones, and if you don't actually take any action in your life, nothing is going to change. And so for me, what I've learned is that I can't rely on motivation to get things done. I have to fall back on discipline, because motivation, it comes and it goes. Some days I feel motivated and I want to take over the world. Other days I feel not so much like doing things. I want to stay in bed, right? And so knowing that that is transient, it is incredibly risky to be relying and banking our future on something that is going to ebb and flow over time. So we have to build discipline. We have to create daily habits and rituals around increasing our energy so that we can actually expand the degree to which this circle of wealth can actually grow. We have to create daily practices and discipline around building our business or building our high income skill set to increase our income. We have to create daily practices and discipline around investing and how we actually manage our money. And ultimately, if we're able to have discipline in all of those areas, that's what's going to allow us to create the wealth that we really desire and deserve in our lives. And I read a quote the other day that made me smile, and it said, "You kind of owe it to yourself to do all the big things that you're dreaming of." And I couldn't agree more. And it brings me to my last point, because I promised that I'd share with you the real reason that I've learned that I became pretty obsessed with money and success. And like I said, it's not because of nice things and Lambos and cars and all that stuff, although that stuff's fun. Who doesn't like that stuff? You realize once you have it, how little it actually truly makes a difference in your life. And what I realized is that money to me is actually safety. It's the ability to make decisions with a lot more freedom. And this is true because I grew up in a household where there was a lot of conflict around money. I saw my parents argue about it a lot of the time. When they split up, I went to the bank with my mom and I saw how terrified she was to restart her financial life later in life. When I got kicked out of home because I was acting out as a teenager, I had nothing, and I experienced that fear myself of not really having a whole lot to make decisions with. Didn't know if I could pay rent, didn't know if I could eat, didn't know if I would have enough. And for me, I just made a commitment as I was going through all of those things that I really wanted to change that. I wanted to create an atmosphere for myself, for my family, where that's never a concern or a consideration, where all of our basic needs are met. And if you've seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'll see that you can't focus on enlightenment and all of the really beautiful things that come in life if you're still worrying about whether or not your basic needs are met. And so to me, understanding money was actually about creating safety for myself, is what I realize now. And I share that with you because I know I'm not alone in that. And it's wild to me that school doesn't teach us this stuff. School is not teaching us how to actually become financially independent. It's not teaching us how to be safe. It's teaching us how to enter the workforce. That's it. But it's up to us to actually acquire these skills on our own. And so if you relate to this, this is your sign to really study business and wealth and understand money, because ultimately that's what's going to allow you to create the life that you really want. It is not a selfish endeavor to want or desire wealth. It is not a selfish endeavor to study it. The more you have, the more you can help others. And I wanted to share that with you because building wealth is how you break free. It's how you break free from limiting beliefs. It's how you break free from a lack of options. It's how you break free from scarcity. And it's how you actually build a foundation of safety that allows you to experience all of the amazing parts of life as well. So hopefully now that you have the formula in this video, you can actually take action upon it and achieve your wildest dreams. I am absolutely rooting for you. And if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and let me know what you want to see next. See you soon.